صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, we'll be starting the program tonight with a recitation of the Holy Quran. I'll be reciting Surah Mulk, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. الذي خلق 7 سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فطور ثم ارجع البصر قرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين وأعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير. إذا ألقوا فيها سمعوا لها شهيقا وهي تفور تكاد تميز من الغيظ كلما ألقي فيها فوج سألهم خزنتها ألم يأتكم نذير قالوا بلى قد جاءنا نذيرا فكذبنا وقلنا ما نزل الله من شيء إن أنتم إلا في ضلال كبير وقالوا لو كنا نسمع أو نعقل ما كنا في أصحاب السعير فاعترفوا بذنبهم فسحقا لأصحاب السعير. إن الذين يخشون ربهم بالغيب لهم مغفرة وأجر كبير وأسروا قولكم أو اجهروا به إنه عليم بذات الصدور ألا يعلم من خلق وهو اللطيف الخبير. هو الذي جعل لكم الأرض ذلولا فامشوا في مناقبها وكلوا من رزقه وإليه النشور. أأمنتم من في السماء أن يخسف بكم الأرض فإذا هي تمور أم أمنتم من في السماء أن يرسل عليكم حاسبا فستعلمون كيف نذير. ولقد كذب الذين من قبلهم فكيف كان نكير. أولم يروا إلى الطير فوقهم صافات ويقبض ما يمسكهن إلا الرحمن إنه بكل شيء بصير. أمن هذا الذي هو جند لكم ينصركم من دون الرحمن إن الكافرون إلا في غرور. أمن هذا الذي يرزقكم من أمسك رزقه بل لجوا في عتو ونفور. أفمن يمشي مقبا على وجهه أحدى أمن يمشي سويا على صراط مستقيم. قل هو الذي أنشأكم وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون. قل هو الذي درعكم في الأرض وإليه تحشرون. ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين قل إنما العلم عند الله وإنما أنا نذير مبين فلما رأوه زلفة سيئت وجوه الذين كفروا وقيل هذا الذي كنتم به تدعون قل أرأيتم من أهلكني الله ومن معي أو رحمنا فمن يجير الكافرين من عذاب عليم قل هو الرحمن آمنا به وعليه توكلنا فستعلمون من هو في ضلال مبين قل أرأيتم من أصبح ماؤكم غورا فمن يأتيكم بماء معين صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات. And now, inshallah, with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, we will invite our respected Sheikh Kamil Kazmi. Salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد عجل فرجهم. Alhamdulillah, we've been blessed with an opportunity to gather and commemorate the Aza of Abu Abdullah once again. As this is the culminating majlis, inshallah, as we're going through some of the points, I will open them up a little bit more. This tradition of recounting the points slowly allows for the digestion of those points in a very real manner for us. It gives us a capacity to think, ponder, and then further that particular understanding in our next interaction. We started and said that shukr is actually a perspective changer. Okay? Consider this story for a while. Okay? Imagine at a workplace, a person gives a gift for 2 months. He gives a gift every single day. Okay? At the 2-month mark, at T2, right, 2-month mark, everybody's perception regarding that person is very positive because he's been giving a gift for the past 2 months. See that? There's another person who has not been giving a gift for the past 2 months, and in their eyes, this particular person's perception is neutral, correct? And then this person A, who was giving a gift for 2 months, stops giving a gift, okay? And person 2 starts giving a gift. 2 weeks later, right, the perception regarding the person who was giving the gift for that shorter period of time is very high and positive because this guy is the one currently giving the gift. You see that? Whereas the perception regarding the person who was giving the gift before ends up being what? That, oh, he stopped. See that? And it doesn't decrease too much, but there is a slight decrease in, oh, he stopped. You see that? Beware of this understanding that when we normalize to things that are given to us, we end up taking them for being granted, basically. What does that mean, granted? Meaning that you assume and suppose that You are the actual deserving owner of that given. And hence, when that particular given is not given, it creates a question of why. You see that? Salawat, please. So, this beware sign beside shukr is that if a non-intellectual person or an intellectual person not being intellectual in that instance continues to do shukr while they suppose some level of ownership to the given such that they expect it, they feel that they deserve it, okay, then all of a sudden what ends up happening, instead of the right things that are supposed to grow, that type of shukr, which is a false shukr, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's the appearance of a shukr, but the actuality of something very different. You see that? It yields its own effects. And its effects are no longer us overlooking the defects. Its effects are us expecting perfection, entitlement. You see that? Whereas shukr was something that was a tool, and the effect of it was that it allowed us to keep our focus on the good and turn our attention away from those details which are bad they're being worked on, inshallah. You see that? The essence of shukr was this. This wolf in sheep's clothes, though, has a very different effect. It breeds within us and creates within us a trait called entitlement. Entitlement doesn't let us overlook the defects. In fact, it starts to grow those defects in our perceptions. You see that? This is very important to understand. There's a hadith from the Holy Prophet. Salawat, please. There's only a few of us. If you guys don't mind coming closer, it helped me a lot. Jazakallah. Thank you so much. Jazakumullah. There's a hadith from the Holy Prophet, and that hadith is this. The Holy Prophet is sitting with some of his companions, and a person comes to the Holy Prophet and says, Holy Prophet, are you scared for your ummah? The Holy Prophet says, yes, I am scared for my ummah. I'm scared for them in their ni'amat more than I'm scared for them in their niqamat. What's a niqmah? Niqmah, generally speaking, it's a hardship. What's a ni'mah? Ni'mah, generally speaking, it's a blessing. The Holy Prophet is telling that particular individual, I'm more scared of my ummah in their ni'amat, their blessings. You see that? I'm still scared in their hardships, but I'm more scared in their blessings. Why? Well, in the hardships, you already have a natural inclination to change the scenario, to move from where you are, to develop further, to grow, and so on and so forth, right? To get out of the hardship towards something which is of an ease. See that? So your internal direction all of a sudden naturally is looking for growth. You see that? Yes, it's true that some individuals who don't have light think down is up and up is down. See that? If you're ever stuck in an avalanche, right? One of the survival tips that they give, I used to go skiing a lot. One of the survival tips that if you're like just covered in snow, now you don't know which way is up and which way is down. They say spit. They spit and see which direction it's going towards to assess where down is. Do you understand? So when somebody is covered and shrouded in darkness, sometimes they lose the sense of which way is up and which way is down. You see that? That's true for individuals who lack knowledge as well. The lower the knowledge is, the more intense and the more dark that shroud ends up being. However, in their nafs, that want to go up is still there. Yes, it might be that apparently speaking, they're going towards a direction which actually is not up. That's a separate issue. But a natural, fitri, innate disposition to move and go towards this thing called up is there in every human fitratan in hardships. No one lands in fire and says, Alhamdulillah, I belong. You see that? But this is not the case when it comes to ni'amat. Ni'amat and blessings are seen as destinations. They're not seen as stepping stones. You see that? When our nafs interacts with a ni'amah, a blessing, right? The blessing in of itself ends up being what? A destination for us. Okay? If you suppose point A is a destination, is there any motivation within to go to point B after that? No. You see that? If you understood this point, please share salawat. You see, at first glance, we look at our life situations and we label things in a very generalized manner. Okay? It's like this. When you're talking to somebody who's in public school or high school, you say, what's your favorite subject? They say, math. Okay? Imagine you're a PhD in math. Okay? You're like, interesting. For them, math is that one subject which goes beside chemistry and physics and this and that and so on and so forth, right? And that's all math is. See that? And that particular person goes into, let's say, a bachelor's of math, and the thing they were spending only 1 hour a day on, they're able to spend 8 hours a day on. All of a sudden they realize that applied math and logic and this and that, all of these things are different. You see that? Their label of math all of a sudden becomes more nuanced. You see that? They go further, they complete their bachelor's, and they recognize that one course they had, they're doing a master's that actually fits within that particular field itself and nothing more. See that? Now they're spending 2 years, sometimes 3 years, perhaps even more, focused on now what before in their bachelor's they spent just 1 term on, let's say. You see that? And then they go further, and this what's happening, their perception and their labeling of the word math is developing and growing. You see that? In the beginning, math was just that subject thing that was there. What's math? That's math. Right? When they became a bachelor student, then what's math? Well, math is this stuff. When they became masters, their perception of it increased. They start to have more of a nuanced and detailed and accurate understanding of the thing. You see that? The same thing applies to what? The allocation of what is a ni'mah and what is a niqmah. What is a blessing and what is a hardship. In the beginning, we say death or loss of a job or sickness is what? It's a hardship. You see that? When you're focused on some effects of the scenario, and those are the intensities for you, right? Then all of a sudden, because they bind you, right, for those intense situations, you can do nothing but look at it from your perspective up, and it looks like a hardship. You see that? But when you're able to consider that particular scenario in a more nuanced way, that hardship in of itself is actually a ni'mah. You see that? And vice versa. A blessing is only a blessing if it's used appropriately, correct? Okay? Imagine you have glasses, okay? But instead of putting them on your eyes, you put them on your head. Okay? Someone can say that it makes you look cool. But you put it on your, I don't know, your knee. Okay? That you might have those glasses, but in terms of the utilization of those glasses, it's not there, correct? Then apparently speaking, you have a ni'mah. Sure, if you wanted to label it, at least you have the possibility of putting it to your eye. You have a potential ni'mah, but you haven't actualized it. You see that? Every ni'mah that we have has a layered system to it that far exceeds that math thing that I told you. Okay? there are various layers to interactions and things, not just the apparent physical layer. At the level that we're able to utilize something, at that level, that thing is a ni'mah for us. Okay? Those levels that are beyond that, that we're not able to utilize, that very item for those things is at that point, a hardship for us. We are not using it. You see that? For the things that were supposed to be used for. If you understood this point, recite a salawat, please. The way this concept links to our topic of problem resolution in family dynamics is that there are oftentimes, we will see that when we get into intense situations within our families, those intensities make us label those events in the past in a very generalized way. See that? Because we store the hurt from them, and every time we remember that particular event, that traumatic hurt is that which comes to mind. You see that? Well, the aqil comes and says that was one layer of that particular event. In fact, that event in of itself spurred within me a lot of other things which have led to growth in so many other dimensions as well. See that? And those dimensions could be opportunities, could be maturity, could be experience, could be the ultimate goal too, which is tawajjuh towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? Now, looking back, if you get tied to those intensities, then those events in the past only end up being sharp objects in memories which bind you and bring you down. Each time you think of it, your heart goes a little bit topsy-turvy, emotionally speaking. You see that? But if you're able to make more nuanced your label maker of ni'mat and niqmat, blessing and hardship, and in a more nuanced way approach those emotional baggages from the past, what that does is it allows you to now, going forward, live with bags that weigh a lot less heavy. Does that make sense? If you don't do that, right, then consistently you're holding on to these bags which weigh a very heavy thing. Why? Because you've labeled them, the whole bag, as heavy thing, niqmah. Okay? But if you're able to go back into those events and those memories and in a nuanced manner look at things appropriately, and going forward, those bags aren't as heavy as you suppose them to be with an incorrect label maker. See that? But the importance of refining that is extremely important. Salawat, please. Sometimes a person could be wondering that why in the time of Arbaeen, family dynamics and problem resolution is a topic that this person chose. See that? Well, the thing is, consider back home. In Arbaeen time, for example, in the Indo-Pak area, in Pakistan, for example, where I'm from, where I was born, rather, right? What ends up happening is, in the time of majalises, they put a lot of emphasis on security. Why? Because there's bad guys there who will come and they'll blow up the mosque. You see that? And depending on which area the azaa is performed, the importance on security is appropriate to that area, correct? Yes or no? Okay. So you see that the bombardment on azaa in the West is not a bombardment of weapons. No one's going to come in here and blow up the Husseiniya. That's not the chances. That's not the thing that's a danger to the azaa here. In the Western world, in particular Canada, one of the greatest threats to the azaa is the bombardments that occur within the family systems. You see that? You were able to hold on to your love of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, not through the streets, but rather it was cultivated in a family unit, in a household, correct? You see that? From a society, if you take the factory which makes pizza away, what happens? Slowly in that city, there's no pizza. You see that? The security threat to the azaa in the West in particular is something that is felt in the family unit, such that if the family unit is broken, right, in of itself, it doesn't allow for that cultivation of love towards the deen. You see that? It creates a lot of difficulties such that the children and the future generations and those people intensely occupied with fighting one another, right? It prevents them from going towards the deen itself, the establishment of the aza itself. So in fact, the topic chosen for Arbaeen is a topic which is hoping to safeguard aza in the future generations. Salawat, please. We talked about the idea of the added stench of hardships. We saw that in Sayyid Sajjadiyah, dua number 7, the Imam said that the tawajjuh towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dissolves the knots of makarih, right? And we talked about it in terms of the stench of a dirty pool, which doesn't let you even approach it to fix the issue. Then we said that, well, after the stench is gone, and you want to actually go ahead and pick up the dead rodent and the broken pump and so on and so forth, and you want to communicate actual things about your intensities, right? Those intensities can bring a boundary around you. They can create a had for you. The Imam said the tawajjuh towards Allah also has a unique thing. It breaks boundaries as well. You're no longer focused in what you're demanding, you also assess how you're demanding it. You see that? When you're caught up in intensities, you might be demanding an actual right of yours, but how you're demanding it makes it really, really bad. See that? Imagine eating your favorite food on a plate covered in mud. Would you eat it? Would you consume that? Probably not, right? You see, words are containers, right? And they contain what? Meanings within them. The meaning you intend to imply and relay, right? If it's put in a plate which is filthy, the other person simply doesn't want to get towards the meaning at all. Does that make sense? So if what you want to say in those intense moments, even if that is correct, Shaitan says, okay, I couldn't get to him there. He cooked the best biryani because fitratan, he knew what his needs were. I couldn't take that away from him. Let me put the biryani on a filthy plate and let's see if the other person can eat it then. You see that? So in the second stage, the Imam says, be very careful. Intensities can bind you. Right? When they bind you, you can't look beyond them. You recognize that you have a need to break free, but the how you project that particular need, right? It doesn't appropriately fit that scenario. If you understood this, say salawat, please. Dear brothers and sisters, the third line is quite unique, where we talked about the idea of begging, and we opened that idea up that when it comes to begging other humans and other individuals, begging is bad because it brings self-worth down. You're placing yourself and saying that my worth in exchange for something else, correct? When it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, anything other than begging is bad. We talked about that last session. Goal setting is very important, okay? If the goal setting is that I want to have a relationship with no fights in it, okay? Then throughout your life, at max, sometimes you're reaching that goal. See that? If the goal is, I want a relationship that doesn't have fights in it, okay? Or I want a relationship that I'm happy in. If this generalized label is what your goal is, you're in a heap of trouble because at max in your whole life, you're going to reach that only some of the times. True or not true? Okay? So quite literally, Shaitan comes and makes it that in your goal setting phase, you are failing by design. You see that? Where the Imam comes and says that, wait a second, your goal setting should be entirely based on something in your control and in no one else's control entirely, such that you're able to maintain and achieve your goal wherever you are. You see that? And the Imam over there comes and explains to us in the begging line where the freshness of the faraj is requested from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? That freshness is only there when things aren't stale, correct? Right? The opposite of stale, correct? Okay. This particular freshness, if it's you dependent, meaning I'm depending on you to bring this freshness into my life, then quite literally, whenever you're not bringing it, I can look to Allah and say, He didn't bring it. Why are you punishing me? You see that? So, very realistically speaking, we said that I am the manager of my minds, my relationships, and this freshness in of itself is brought from nothing but the tawajjuh towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? That if you are able to maintain this particular tawajjuh towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Then even in the most difficult of times, right? You're achieving a particular goal. If you're not able to maintain this particular tawajjuh towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then even in the best of times, at max, you've tasted the sweet poison. You see that? A goal is something that throughout, imagine a marathon you're running, okay? You're running a marathon. Your goal is the finish line, right? Why? Because throughout the entire journey, you can aim for it and strive towards it. Yes or no? Okay? That's what a goal is, right? So if the goal in your life ends up being something that you can only strive towards some of the times, and that's not a goal for your life at all. You see that? Do you see that? So those individuals who have thriving relationships with whatever they have, money, family, health, themselves, whatever the case may be. Those individuals have good relationships or in healthy relationships, okay? For them, this goal is quite questionable if it was simply to be happy, right? And that goal is already achieved. You already reached the finish line. You see what I'm trying to say? That at least in that moment, there's no goal to chase after. Does that make sense? That's why the Imam is saying that, and the Holy Prophet said, I'm more worried for my ummah in their ni'amat. Because the thing is, when it comes time to forgetting the goal, it's not in the hardships that we forget the goal is tawajjuh towards Allah. Fitratan, quite naturally, around that time we go towards Allah. You see that? It's when the plane is flying without turbulence that we forget and we go towards the TV screen. Does that make sense? See that? So when it comes to healthy relationships, don't take the sweet poison. Don't let shaitan or the inner shaitan, yourself, flip that particular goal. The goal has not changed. The same goal in the hardship, which wanted you to develop and grow and become better, it should not go away in the blessing as well. You see that? Salawat, please. When we talked last time, we said that this submission towards Allah, this tawajjuh towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this world is always through tawajjuh towards a creature of Allah, correct? Yes or no? We talked about the Kaaba example. That if I was to go and do sajda to the Kaaba, if I wanted to do sajda to Allah, where would we do sajda? We do sajda to the Kaaba, correct? And the Kaaba is a creature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see that? So in this particular world, whenever you want to do something for Allah, it ends up coming in the form of doing something towards or for a creature of Allah. Okay? So in blessings as well, maintaining your tawajjuh towards Allah comes in the form of developing that particular blessing. You see that? It's not separate from that. But with tawajjuh that you're doing it not as your own self, as your own independent owner, not the pharaonic I. Rather, you're doing it as now the owned I. You're developing that blessing, right? You're growing that particular blessing. You're being thankful towards that particular blessing, but it's with the understanding that have an owner who's demanded this from you. Does that make sense? It's a nuanced directional difference that changes the end result entirely. From somebody reaching the finish line, inshallah, to somebody who doesn't even start running in the race. You see that? Salawat, please. So, continuing on this particular line of thought as well, This inappropriate label maker within us is something that is difficult and problematic. I'm going to give you some other examples where shaitan, the outer shaitan or the inner shaitan, comes and changes the labels of things, and it lets shaitan create a lot of havoc. Okay? When it comes to the Sharia, the religious rulings, okay, what happens? Sometimes shaitan comes and makes some individuals feel that the Sharia, who owns it, who creates it, it makes them think that the maraji and the ulama are the ones that are creating the Sharia. You see that? What is a Sharia? A Sharia is something which it binds a person, correct? There are a set of rules, correct? Every rule creates for you a boundary. Yes or no? Ever heard of a rule that doesn't create a boundary? Is it possible? Even if the rule was that there are no rules, you've still created a boundary of no rules. Does that make sense to you? See that? Every rule innately in of itself, if it's a rule, it's something that binds you. You adhere to it. Do you understand that? See that? So, binding of the nafs, right, is the diminishing and the controlling of freedom for that nafs. Innately, is it a positive thing or a negative thing for the nafs? Is it a hard pill to swallow or an easy pill to swallow? It's a hard pill to swallow. Yes or no? Okay. Shaitan, he does something unique. He comes and he changes your perception of who the owner of the Sharia is. If the perception comes into understanding that, oh, these guys, these mujtahideen and these ulama are the ones that, out of their pocket coming up with when is Eid and when is not Eid, when is this and when is that, and so on and so forth. This idea of khums and this idea of zakat and this idea of this and that and so on and so forth. If he attributes ownership to those individuals, then all of a sudden it becomes very, very hard. Why? My innate love was to the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see that? The beloved person in my eyes was Allah and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. The maraji'een and the ulama, if my intellect was aware, I was able to see things clearly, then yes, I see them as connectors to Allah and the Ahlul Bayt. And that love then follows down to them. You see that? But in a blurred mindset, if I prescribe ownership to the Sharia to these individuals, it becomes a lot easier for me to dislike them and also take the Sharia to be something very light. Does that make sense? Okay? This labeling of ownership is very important. Salawat, please. Well, the responsibility of the ulama and the maraji'in is to do istimbat. Istimbat means what? Imagine you have a well and there's water at the bottom of the well, right? Istimbat just means dipping the bucket down and pulling up whatever is down there. See that? So the job of each marja and each mujtahid is simply that, is to throw the bucket that they have been able to create through studying different sciences in the well of whatever the Ahlul Bayt have provided through the Quran and the riwayat, right? And pull the bucket up. Whatever comes out is what they give to the people. You see that? At no point are they creators of the Sharia. They're simply the extractors of it. You see that? So that means that if I all of a sudden have a beef with what the maraji'in are saying, the Sharia that has been presented to me, right? At some levels, it ends up becoming a beef with the well. Be very careful here. Salawat, please. Let's open up what a Sharia is as well. In Arabic, you have the word called shari'. What's a shari'? Road, street, right? Another area where shara'ah is used in Arabic language is, for example, to start. Also, if I was pointing, let's say, a weapon towards you, it could be used towards that too, like giving direction to something. Okay, a road has something that has direction to it, right? So Sharia now is a road, a thing that has direction to it. Yes? That in of itself has what? the idea of range built within it. Yes or no? Okay. So we have to understand that the Sharia in of itself is something that is range capable. If my interaction with the Sharia is that of an on-off switch, if I say, okay, I prayed, check mark, I gone, go ahead, wassalam, then I'm interacting with something that has range in a manner that does not provide range. You see that? But now all of a sudden, the interaction with the Sharia can't be that of an on-off switch. If the Sharia itself innately has a range to it, then my labeling of whether an action was performed or not can't be done or undone, or done or not done. You see that? Because that thing in of itself was not an item of just done or not done. Does that make sense to you? Okay. If that thing in of itself has a range to it, right, then when that particular, what that particular intensity of that range is that particular label maker. I prayed salah. Okay, what does that mean? At what level? What was the effect of that? Does that make sense to you? Okay. Every entity and every item comes with its own effect. Can I create a fire over here without it having heat? Can I do that? No, right? The greater the fire I make, the greater the heat will be, correct? Okay? So if you want to establish and understand your relationship with the Sharia and see that at which range of that particular Sharia's existence you are interacting with it, you simply have to see, does it have an impact and effect on you as a person or not? If you see a growing heat and freshness in interaction with the Sharia, then you're saying, okay, wait a second, it actually has heat in it. But if you notice that the Sharia in of itself is becoming stale for you, Salah is seen as a repetition for you. Yesterday's Fajr and today's Fajr have no difference for you. They're both Fajrs. If you're not able to see any change within you, experience any depth or growth for you, at the very least in the presence of the mind, at the very least in the digestion of understandings. Understand that there might not be a fire there at all. You might be connecting to the beginning of the street and thinking that's the destination. There's a street that takes us from here all the way to my house in Kingston, let's say. If you thought that the street in of itself was the destination, would you ever reach my house? No, right? And if you're somebody who's supposing that the street is the house, I simply would come to you and say, hey, my house has this special type of fan in it that gives mists off. Can you feel the mistiness on you? You're like, no. Oh, then recognize you're not in my house yet. Change your label of destination, please. You see that? That's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm encouraging and inviting all the nufus that are listening to this to say, you all interact with the Sharia. You all claim and you all know that you interact with it. Okay? If that interaction is an interaction which does not have freshness for you, but rather has staleness in it for you, understand you have not reached the destination. You see that? You need to change something about that particular interaction. Keep moving. And if you don't change things and you don't fix the manner of interacting, then God forbid, you will never reach the house. You will be on the street, but you might never actually reach the destination the street was pointing towards. If you understood this, recite salawat, please. In this, it's extremely important to understand that the label of who owns the fault and who owns the intensities and the situations is extremely important to understand. Another scenario. Imagine you have a scenario where a husband looks at his bank account and he sees that the credit card bill is extremely high. Okay? And he gets really riled up. Like, oh my God, my family spent so much money and so on and so forth. He goes home and his wife says, I haven't spent anything. And he realizes that actually it was his own expense. You see that? The rage before that realization, when the ownership, did the debt change after realization? Yes or no? But the ownership of that particular debt changed it, correct? Before the recollection, the ownership and the responsibility of that particular debt was towards someone else, and hence the intensity of the emotion was felt at a very different level. You see that? As soon as the ownership shifted to the husband, what happens? The intensity of the anger goes away. You see that? You see that? Have you seen somebody who creates that recollection and start to scream at themselves? No. But if it happened to be that the other person said, "Oh yeah, it was my fault," they might now treat that other person in a very harsh and angry manner. You see that what I'm trying to say? Right? So the intensity decreases as the ownership changes. The same pattern was shown in the example of Shaitan and how he changes the ownership of the Sharia. It comes in family life as well. When you have difficulties, if you're putting the blame on the other person in an absolute way, it becomes a lot easier for you to get angry and riled up. But if you're asking, what did I do that led and enabled that person to reach this stage 2? Because we're playing in relationships ping pong, right? You see what I'm trying to say? Relationships are interactions, right? They're two directional in their existence and one directional in their management. You see that? So they're two directional in the takween and unidirectional in the tashri', for example, if I was to use Islamic terminologies. Salawat, please. What Shaitan will do is he'll come and he'll make you feel like the Pharaoh in the Ni'amat. What did the Pharaoh said? The Pharaoh felt that he owned everything, right? Ana rabbukumul a'la. Rabb meaning the sustainer, right? The Lord and the sustainer. The Pharaoh felt that he was the sustainer and the owner of everything. Shaitan will come and in blessings for you, make your nafs feel like it is the owner of everything. And when it comes to niqamat, hardships, it'll do the opposite. It'll make you submit and believe that the opposite person is the owner of all the hardships. You see that? Shaitan doesn't take you away from the pharaonic eye. It just switches the labels on you. In the blessings, you feel you're the owner of all good, and in the hardships, you feel the other person is the owner of all the deficiencies. But we're told something very different. In many of our du'as, the du'a says, "Oh Allah, I became sick and you cured me." See that? What's happening is the ma'asum is changing our perception of thought. He's saying if your enemy is telling you to go right, where should you go? Left, right? If your enemy is trying to dictate allocations and ownerships in a particular way, understand the real key is hidden somewhere else. If Shaitan is pointing that way, say, go run that way. That's the last place you should be running. You should be looking where he's not pointing to. You see that? So when it comes time to difficulties and intensities, many du'as point to this idea that when I became sick, you cured me. The ownership of the difficulty is associated with who? The I, while the ownership of the blessing is associated with not I. You see that? This change of perception and this change of labeling is essential to developing a real goal, and then you're only able to run after that goal. Otherwise, you'll make a false goal, simply reaching something called happiness, simply reaching something called financial security, simply reaching something called marital security, simply reaching something called physical health or security. See that? These are all false finish lines. Salawat, please. Salawat, please. You see, this particular I that is within us, this divine I, it's only divine when it understands that it's owned. Okay? How does it understand that it's owned? it's not in false labeling either. I'll open this particular point up and then I'll end your zahmat, inshallah, for today. Consider this. If somebody assumed that humility and humbleness, right, was in the display of it only. So when it came time to looking at you, I said, oh, how are you doing? As you say in Farsi, no kadrata mo shakirata. Okay? If the display of humility was labeled as the actual humility, you see that? What happens? Then shaitan comes and uses that humility to take you towards kibr, pride. Why? Because when you see somebody else didn't do no karatam and shakiratam, you say, well, look how humble I am and how humble he isn't. You see that? How does this link to this trait of marital relationships and intensities in marital relationships? Well, when it comes time to dealing with these intensities, shaitan will come and make you focus on certain areas where you have worked on things and amplify them for you. And then he'll send you cannoning towards the other person. And what? Look, I've worked on these things over here and that person hasn't worked at all. I'm going 95% of the journey and they're not meeting me halfway. They're only coming 5% of the journey. You see that? Shaitan will come and start to do that. Whereas the intellect comes and says, wait a second, did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say that be a good husband to your wife only if she's a good wife to you? Anywhere in the Quran say that? Anywhere in the Quran says, be a good husband only if your wife is good. Be a good sibling only if the other sibling is good. Anywhere in the Quran say that? Be a good child only if the parents are good. Anywhere in the Quran say that? Does that make sense to you? Shaitan will come and make you play tit for tat in terms of intensities. He takes humans from humility towards kibr. Understand this particular person. You see that? A shaitan will come and take you from your positive efforts and you, because positive efforts' goal was what? It was to fix the relationship, correct? It'll take those very things and cannonball them into the relationship, breaking the relationships. You see that? I did A and I did B to fix my relationship. And now shaitan will make me use those very things to mention them and fester within me negativities, which end up breaking that relationship. Does that make sense to you? Are you following what I'm saying? Humility and humbleness was what? It was the bringing low of myself before Allah, correct? Not feeling that I'm above other creatures of Allah, correct? Shaitan took that very attempt and the very appearance of it and did what? It did the exact opposite. It led you to kibr. You see that? Does that make sense to you? This unique trait of shaitan exists everywhere. Salawat, please. Brothers and sisters, there's a reason why regarding the shaitan, Allah has said he is your open enemy. If you go towards Kingston from a particular route, and that's the route you take to Kingston, if you were to direct somebody else, you will typically direct them from the same route that you went, correct? Okay. Azizam, shaitan works in the exact same way. The only way he can take us to hellfire is the same way he landed himself there. There is no second route to hellfire. It's not possible for us to go to hellfire without going through that particular route, because shaitan doesn't know any other route. He went to hellfire through this particular route. Let's open up the route shaitan went to hellfire with. Okay, salawat please. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells shaitan, do sajda to Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, correct? Okay. What does shaitan get bound down in? Shaitan sees deficiencies in Hazrat Adam. Does he not say, خَلَقْتَنِي مِن نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِن تِينٍ? Correct? He says, you made me from fire and you made that particular creature of yours from teen. You see that? Okay. Allah doesn't say afterwards to Shaitan that you're wrong, fire is actually lower than teen. Because it's true. Fire is, in terms of existential realities, supposed to be more latif, more higher of a creature than teen. You see that? Okay. Allah doesn't say you're a liar. So Shaitan gets occupied in the deficiencies of Hazrat Adam alayhi salam. The deficiencies what? That he is from teen. You see that? And in being occupied and bound by the intensities of the deficiency of the other person, he forgets that the relationship maintenance was supposed to be managed by him alone. It was not the case that Allah told him to submit only if Adam happens to be better than you. See that? In a very similar manner, Shaitan makes us occupied with the deficiencies of everybody around us, such that the Qibla is this way. The Qibla is this way. Shaitan, sorry, I had to correct that, inshallah. Salawat, please. Shaitan, what does he do? He makes you get occupied with the deficiencies of those around you in a very unique way. That you forget that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you to be a good husband or a good brother or a good father, regardless of what the other person is doing. Does that make sense? That's exactly what initiates and intensifies family strifes. Shaitan makes us fall into the same tit-for-tat game that he fell into with Hazrat Adam alayhi salam. There is no other way to hellfire but that. He makes you fall into the deficiencies of your situation and forget that the one commanding you to submit and do the right thing in those situations knows exactly how hard those situations are as well. He knows the hardship of them more than you do. As well as you know yourself and your existence, he knows the situation in that same manner, but better. You see that? So Shaitan makes you lose your focus on the commander and then get stuck in the deficiencies of the Adam around you. Well, Allah is saying, if you wish to submit to me, submit to the Adam. Do sajda to the Adam. If you wish to submit to me, be a good husband, regardless of how your wife is. Because when you go to your grave, I will not ask you that, was your wife a good wife or not? But I will ask you, were you a good husband or not? Salawat, please. So when it comes time to relationships and family units, difficulties make the relationship stale. Because often in all relationships, the difficulties, when they're not solved, we fall into a pattern of them. Okay? And because we can't solve them, then that same type of difficulty wears a different clothes and come back into our life. Does that make sense to you? If you can't solve a particular thing, right? That same particular thing, because you don't know how to solve it, and hence it becomes a difficulty for you, then it keeps coming back into your life in different clothings, in different appearances. See that? It's in a relationship when that continues to happen, that relationship starts to lose freshness because the person starts to get frustrated. You see, this particular difficulty keeps coming and I keep feeling like I'm bashing my head against the wall. Don't know what's going on. Does that make sense? And as that relationship, and right now I'm talking about a family relationship, but this is a reality with everything. Your deen, yourself, your intellect, your everything. Okay? As the difficulty is repeated, what ends up happening is you feel that staleness coming up, that friction coming up. Why? Because you don't understand where the door to get by this particular difficulty is. Okay? Understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every difficulty has placed a road and a door for you. It's not possible that He created you and said, I want to watch you fry. It's not possible. Okay? So, in whichever intensities and difficulties you are, understand that you're supposed to be striving towards finding that door in it, solving that particular difficulty. Not because you're scared or are frustrated with the fire of it, but because you're an owned creature and your owner has told you you have to leave this place and grow. Salawat, please. When it comes time to our role models, we look at Arbaeen and we look at the understanding of what happened in Karbala, and we are reminded that such a thing actually did happen. Did you know that in the time of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, this particular story has a lot of depth to it? Okay. In the initial phases, what everybody commonly knows is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspired and gave wahi to Hazrat Ibrahim and told him what? That I wish you to slaughter your son, correct? That if you wish to submit to me, it has to be through this particular action. And he takes his son and he's trying to slaughter his son, but what ends up happening? The son is not slaughtered, correct? Now, over here, everybody knows. What happens after this? Not everybody knows. There's a riwayah from Amrada alayhi salam which says that Hazrat Ibrahim talks to Allah. And Allah, what deficiency was there that you didn't grant me this highest level of hardship such that through being patient over that, I would get closer to you? Okay, see that? Perspective change. Hazrat Ibrahim says, oh Allah, you inspired me in my dream to sacrifice my son, and up until the point of action, I had this highest level of tawajjuh towards you, but you took my son away and you put sheep there for me instead. What deficiency was there that you didn't let me slaughter my son so that I could experience that highest level of hardship, yet still have my entire tawajjuh towards you as the commander? Not the deficiency of the commanded. You see that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells through Imam Rada, this is coming to us inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam that, oh Ibrahim, do you love the Holy Prophet of Islam? And Hazrat Ibrahim says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I love him more than myself. But he goes further. He says, I love him so because of the greatness of your love towards him. Meaning that even in the allocation of hub now, Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam is telling us what? He's saying even my labeling of hub is something that has attention towards you. Hub means love. Even my label of love is directed by you, God. I don't love the Holy Prophet because I think he's really good. I love the Holy Prophet because you think he's really good. You see that? And I love him more than me because in your eyes, Allah, he has a higher station than me. You see that? Very logic and actuality based. This communication continues. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he says, do you love your son more or do you love the grandson of the Holy Prophet more? Okay. Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam says that, oh Allah, just as the reasoning was there for me loving the Holy Prophet more, in your eyes, the grandson of the Holy Prophet has a higher station, and hence I love him more than I love my son. You see that? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked Ibrahim that, oh Ibrahim, which is then the hardest of difficulties? Is it the slaughter of your son by your hands? Or is it the slaughter of the grandson of the Holy Prophet by the hands of those who were not commanded to do so? See that? There's a couple of points we have to understand here. Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, the difficulty in slaughtering his son was not because he loved his son because of his son. You see that? Because then he came to response, he said, I love myself because of my position in your eyes, Allah. And hence, if somebody is closer to you, then I love that person more. You see that? And hence, when it came time to how much I love my son, oh Allah, at the closeness this son is to you, that's how much I love this particular son. And that's what gave the intensity of the slaughtering of my son for me. And overcoming that was my test. And I thought it was the hardest of tests. You see that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that particular situation corrects Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam's understanding and says, wait a second, there's a level higher than this. For there are individuals higher than this. So the thing that makes what happened in Ashura the greatest of tragedies is that it happened to the one who was the closest to Allah himself. You see that? And it happened to him not through the command of Allah. The crying that I have for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, it's not a crying of the pharaonic eye. It's not that because I like Imam Hussein, now I'm crying for Imam Hussein. And if you like someone else, then you'll cry for someone else. You see that? Abana Ibrahim alayhi salam is directing our understanding of the sorrow itself. It's an essential point to understand. Salawat, please. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. O Master, Ya Hussein, we come to your door this day. We cry for you. We weep for you. For you were the closest to Allah. There is a time in Ashura itself when it's extremely difficult for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Inshallah, we can appreciate a level of that difficulty today. There's a time when Imam Hussein alayhi salam is sending a very special son of his to the battlefield. The riwayat says the Imam is saying that, oh Allah, bear witness that I'm sending my son Ali to the battlefield, who is the most resembling of the Nas towards the Holy Prophet. He is the one who is the closest to the Holy Prophet in many ways. The closer this individual, the son of Imam Hussein, was to the Holy Prophet, the greater the love Imam Hussein alayhi salam had towards this son. He says, oh Allah, the fact that you're witnessing this and you're watching this is the only thing that makes this easy for me. As Ali al-Akbar has taken his permission to go towards the battlefield, as he goes towards the battlefield, the riwayat say Abu Abdullah is following behind him. This is an extremely difficult time from our Mawla. There comes a time when Ali al-Akbar alayhi salam gets surrounded by the enemies, and he says, Assalamu alayka ya abata. The narrations say that Imam Hussein alayhi salam goes towards the battlefield like an eagle. He flies towards the battlefield. When he approaches the body of Ali al-Akbar, which at this particular point has been torn to pieces by swords, the narration says that Abu Abdullah falls from his horse and he places his face on the face of Ali al-Akbar and he starts to weep and he starts to cry. This is an intense moment for Abu Abdullah. This is an intense moment for Abu Abdullah, for the one who is at the place of the one who he has just sacrificed is the closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for that son is the most resembling of the son to the Holy Prophet. both in how he looked and how he behaved and how attentive he was towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was the most greatest of difficulties for Abu Abdullah. Matam Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا أمير المؤمنين حجج الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله.
No,